start any more now. Any moment now. Mm, yeah. So the recording has started. So I would like you all to meet Sriram. He's a research scholar at NEC Labs. He's working with Professor Manmohan Chandrekar, and he has previously worked in the Robotic Research Center in IIIT Hyderabad, and also worked as an intern in IIIT Delhi. So his major domain of interest is perception and autonomous vehicles, and he has quite a lot of interesting work in this domain. Today he would be explaining us about safety and the multiple future hypotheses for these systems. So before we get started, I would like the audience members to have their doubts written down in the chat box or raise hand at the end of the session and not disturb the continuum of the talk. Thank you. I guess, yeah, you can take over now.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so can you guys actually see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. So 1 second. All right. Anyway, thanks for this great introduction. Let me put it on slideshow. Oh, so it was nice. Yeah, so before I begin the talk, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any point on the talk, so you don't have to wait. So yeah, before I move on, so again, hi, I'm Sriram from NEC Labs America, and so this talk is titled Towards Safer Autonomy, Predicting Simultaneous Multi-Hypothesis Futures. So while most of this talk, I'll be focusing on future prediction, I'll also try to talk a little bit more about autonomous vehicles and also try and introduce the domain of embodied AI, just to get you guys excited about that field. And yeah. So, okay. All right. So just to give an overview of my career trajectory till now, I did my bachelor's in southern part of India in Shastra University, studying electrical engineering. So during that time, I got an opportunity to work at IIIT Delhi as a summer intern on an autonomous car project. It was a very rewarding experience, which kind of made me realize that AI and robotics is something that I'm interested in, and I want to build my career on. And the internship also sort of opened doors to me, which helped me secure a position at IIIT Hyderabad. And again at Hyderabad, so I started working on these autonomous cars, but it was something that was completely different from what I did in my previous internship. I also got like some research experience there and published a couple of papers in conferences like IROS and Ivy. So then I moved to NEC Labs America as a research scholar, and I've been here at San Jose doing research at NEC since 2019. All right. So this slide is just to sort of give an overview of my journey with robots so far. So I did a fair bit of work in planning and control when I interned at IIIT Delhi, and this work also sort of involved integrating the autonomy stack to build a complete prototype of an autonomous car. And I've also worked on things like perception and low-level control, which is basically designing the hardware. And and I've also worked on like with a bunch of different robots like Husky and Firebird during my undergrad and my stay at IIIT. All right, so here I have just tried to bring down my research till now into various domains. So majority of my work at NEC has been focused on things like diverse future prediction. Back in India, I also worked on language and vision conditioned autonomous navigation. And more recently, I've been focusing on problems like problems in the domain of embodied AI. So this is sort of an upcoming work that I'm doing, so I won't be able to talk about it much. So most of this talk will be mostly focused on diverse future prediction, a part of it. But I will also briefly talk about embodied AI domain just to get you guys excited about that field, give an overview of what is there in the community at this point. Okay, so before I move on to the research, I would just sort of want to give an overview of my journey with robots. So my first experience in trying to work on autonomous driving, which was basically started off with building an autonomous vehicle prototype during my internship at IIIT Delhi. So you can see here the vehicle operating autonomously, and the vehicle is equipped with a LiDAR and a GPS, and is kind of capable of navigating given like the starting point and destination in GPS coordinates. So my work here actually started with designing a PID controller for throttle, steering, and brake. And then I worked on perception part of it, where like I tried to get the scene information by building occupancy maps, and finally implemented an open motion planning library based RRT star planner. So like which would just basically give you like a trajectory towards any goal point on the occupancy map. And all these things were like put together to build a waypoint follower. So given sort of a GPS coordinate of waypoints, we kind of convert them into local frame of reference and plan a trajectory towards it using the RRT star planner. So here you can see the vehicle actually navigating through tight spaces autonomously. And let me just try to play the video faster. So the waypoints are already given to the vehicle about how it has to navigate around in the scene. So this is inside a IIIT Delhi campus, where currently we are going inside a parking lot. You can see some people walking around, so we had to honk, so we didn't want any casualties. All right, so this vehicle just operated using LiDAR and GPS and basically did waypoint following and static obstacle avoidance. All right, and again at IIIT Delhi, I kind of worked on similar autonomous car project, but on a completely different set of things. So if you had noticed the previous video, the vehicle was equipped with a CAN-based gateway, which actually made things easier to sort of communicate with the car. But at IIIT Hyderabad, we started working on a stock car, which is actually available to the public, and took on this task of building the gateway system by ourselves. So here the task was to sort of build a low-level controller that can actually give you the desired throttle and steering values to the to actually the car. So in order to be able to actually do this, we had to kind of tap into the wires of these steering motor and throttle controller. So here you can actually see the picture of a completed setup. So we had to sort of remove the dashboard completely in order to get even get access to these systems. So this is a picture of a brake controller. So we were able to control the throttle and steering electronically, but brake was not something that we can control electronically in the car. So we had to sort of so it had a mechanical lever, and we sort of built a brake actuating system, which would like pull the brake lever down at high speeds. So we attached a DC motor, which would basically pull the brake lever down at high speeds when the brake is actually applied. So this is a video of an initial demonstration that we made with the system and showcased static obstacle avoidance. So we kind of used this platform as a test bed to our algorithms, whatever we did on the research front, we tried to implement on this card. And so this is sort of an initial demonstration that we made where like it's operating basically from so we built embedded systems which would sort of communicate with the car, and like it takes inputs from a high-level planner, converts them into throttle and steering values, and communicates with the car, which would then achieve whatever the desired throttle or steering that we actually provide. All right. So, okay, so now I'll try to describe my work on diverse future prediction here. So first of all, I would want to give a high-level overview of where trajectory prediction actually fits in the autonomy stack and why is it actually important, right? So if you consider autonomous driving, you can kind of classify the autonomy stack into different modules, such as sensor data, perception, prediction, and planning, where like output from one module is fed as input to the other. And prediction is a critical need for autonomous driving, as like one should be able to predict the motion of nearby agents for an informed planning process. So if you make predictions, improper predictions, it can either lead to agents like stopping, executing conservative actions like stopping unnecessarily, or even like cause collisions as shown on the left, and it can even be more fatal. So, but if you see humans, humans have this inherent ability to reason and predict other agents' actions. Uh, like imagine one of these actors being controlled by a computer in this scenario, just be very chaotic. And the scenario is actually even more difficult for social robots, like robots navigating inside a crowd, because the scene is quite unstructured in that case. So the question is, how can we obtain such a level of intuition or intelligence when we are traversing on the road? So as I mentioned before, humans have this inherent ability to reason and predict other agents' actions in the scene, but doing such things with the computer is actually a challenging task. So in order to obtain prediction, in order to obtain a reliable estimate for the future, we need to address like a variety of challenges in things like multimodality, interactions, scene consistency, and also ranking. For example, for any given past of the vehicle, that can be like multiple future realizations of the scene in the scene. For example, this blue car can either stop and yield before this parked bus, or can go past it by making a lane change based on the driver's intent. So being able to provide these multimodal predictions is actually essential to be able to have a very good estimate of the future. And there can also be like interactions happening between the actors in the scene. For example, there can be some interaction between a car and a pedestrian, or even between two cars. And apart from just providing these multimodal predictions, we also need to rank those predictions based on their likelihood to sort of make an informed and confident decision about what you need to do next. For example, things like this car, there's an 80% chance that this vehicle would stop before the crosswalk, and there's a 20% chance that it would actually go past it. And there's also a need that the predictions should be aware of several constraints in the scene. Like here, by constraints, I mean things like traffic lights, stop signs, or even crosswalks, and how the road topology basically. So these sort of problems actually make prediction one of the difficult problems to solve. Okay, so this work is titled SMART, Simultaneous Multi-Agent Recurrent Trajectory Prediction, which was published in last year ECCV 20. So I'll try to briefly describe this work. I would not necessarily go into the details, but if you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any point. So in this work, we propose like advances that address like key challenges in future trajectory prediction in terms of data and also in terms of prediction outputs. If you look at existing prediction systems, they are fundamentally limited by lack of diversity that is actually available in the training data. So it is essential that we have diverse behaviors in the dataset in order to obtain predictions that are multimodal. So our motivation here in this paper was to explicitly introduce this diversity in the data and capture this diversity through a deep network. And moreover, an ideally prediction framework should also have sort of like these three properties. First, it should be able to predict multiple plausible trajectories in the dominant modes of motion. Prediction should be consistent with the scene semantics, and it is attractive for several applications if you have like constant time predictions irrespective of number of agents there in the scene. So like if you have 10 agents in the scene, and if you have 100 agents in the scene, if your prediction time is actually constant, it's actually very useful. So in this paper, we aim to address these issues and propose methods that can help achieve the above properties that I just mentioned. All right, so our contribution in this work is kind of twofold. First, we introduce a simulation strategy to create some diverse training examples. And second, we provide a prediction method that can provide diverse future outputs with strong semantic coupling at constant time. I'll try to very briefly describe the simulation part a little bit. So if you look at the simulation, some main challenges, obviously in the simulation are things like the simulated outputs should be as realistic as possible. So in this paper, what we do is we propose to recreate exact driving scenarios from existing data sets and sort of augment them with with simulated outputs, basically. So apart from the scene, the generated output should also be vested with a sense of general driving behavior, like a car might sort of slow down or stop before an intersection while taking a turn. And we also need to kind of model appropriate vehicle dynamics to simulate trajectories for every scene. All right, so this kind of shows the simulation pipeline here. So we provide a simulation strategy that kind of imbues the realism from real-world datasets while augmenting them with diverse trajectories and which cover like different modes of motion that a vehicle can take. So here, if you look at this, we have like three main modules that help achieve this. So first is a scene generation module, which uses like an openly available map information, also called as OpenStreetMaps, to construct a road graph representation of any given scene. And this representation is used for the diverse behavior generation module, where we identify what are the plausible behaviors that a vehicle can actually execute and sample an appropriate velocity profile for that behavior from a bag of real-world samples that we already have. So once we have this velocity profile, we feed this velocity profile along with the road graph of the scene to the dynamic simulator. So the dynamic simulator consists of things like vehicle dynamics engine, which has like an intelligent driver model, and also mobile, which would take lane change decisions. So this vehicle dynamics engine gives you acceleration and lane change decisions that you have to take, and then there's a low-level controller which updates the state of the vehicle accordingly based on whatever the high-level planner is actually giving us input. So here we kind of show different behaviors that we generated for every vehicle in the real scene. So in the top, you're actually seeing a real scene, and on the bottom you have like diverse behaviors for that particular scene that be recreated from the exact driving scenario. So I will try to now briefly describe about our prediction method. So the input to this module, so this is basically the pipeline of SMART that we proposed. So the input is the past trajectory of every actor that is there in the scene, and also something called a scene context map, which tells you about the surrounding. And the output is predicted trajectory for every vehicle that is there in the scene. So here, there are some key ideas that we propose. So the first thing that we propose is to use novel parameterization, which provides a single representation for the entire scene. So to be more specific, we encode like agent-specific information in kind of this channel dimension that we are showing on the map. And we also encode interactions and also capture semantics concurrently through our conditional generator that is shown here. And our method also provides tight semantic coupling because it captures like per pixel semantic information in top view. So we use convolutional LSTM operations for temporal propagation and provide like per time step predictions for all agents at once. And we also achieve like constant time predictions irrespective of number of agents in the scene, as I mentioned before, because our method actually just requires a single forward pass to unroll trajectories. And you can also attribute this to our novel scene representation, which is basically given as input to a network. So the plot on the left actually shows the time complexity comparison of a baseline social GAN, which we compared with SMART that we proposed. So if you observe social GAN, the time increases with increase in number of agents, while for SMART it remains constant. And on the right, we show the performance that we have achieved on a publicly available benchmark. So we achieved like state-of-the-art numbers on it. So these are some prediction results on at some interesting locations, such as like intersection. And what if note here is like the prediction sample for all agents were generated simultaneously. All right, so if you guys have any questions, maybe I can pause at this point or I can move forward.
I have a question. So when you said that for like if we have number of like if we increase the number of agents, the time remains constant, right? Like, could you just explain it a bit further?
Yeah.
Like,
so
how is it actually done?
Yeah. So what we have is like a single representation where like every agent is kind of encoded at like 1 pixel location. So for any given scene, if you can imagine, every agent occupies, let's say, all the pixels that are there in the scene. So what we provide, like every the trajectory output is like kind of a map that we predict as the next state map. So the current state actually encodes all agents that are there in the scene, and what we do predict is like the next state map. So the state map prediction is irrespective of number of agents that is there in the scene. So.
Okay. So the state map would remain constant, as in the length of the state map would remain constant,
the dimension
would not increase. Okay.
Yeah, the dimension
also
of the state.
Also for when you were talking about the simulation part, also like were you able to use Kitty dataset to generate the top view dataset of this?
Yeah.
And like maybe a bit on how did you do that?
Okay.
Like
So Kitty has like GPS information available.
Okay.
So this is like this scene that we show is an Argovas dataset, but Kitty does have like GPS information available. So as I mentioned before, we use something called OpenStreetMaps, which is like similar to Google Maps but kind of open sourced. So we use that to kind of recreate the topology of where the vehicles were, and that's how we recreated scenes on Kitty.
Okay, so, and when you test, you also take the top view, like the GPS points, and then you predict. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so the top view information is just the GPS information is just used to recreate the topological layer of the scene. So all prediction methods assume the availability of something called HD maps for the vehicles. So like because HD maps are kind of like becoming the norm these days, that like any prediction mechanism that you see uses these HD map information. So GPS information was used to kind of create a pseudo HD map from using OpenStreetMaps, basically.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Sriram. So one question, more of a clarification. Yeah, in this very slide where you showed the framework. So I understood that there can be more than one trajectories which is happening, and which I saw in the prediction. So basically, the output of this generator, this conditional generator, is it like a family of trajectories? And if yes, how do you parameterize it with an LSTM? Because a single trajectory and a single scene I can understand, but does it, stack up a family of these trajectory, future states, or how does that? Just explain the output.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, this I haven't explained this module very in detail. So this conditional generator is a CB. This is basically a CBAE that you see. It's a conditional variational autoencoder. So what we do here is like every you sample a noise vector and you provide this noise vector as input to one of your inputs, and for every noise vector that you generate a separate scene. How would a scene roll out basically? So if you sample one noise vector, you would kind of get like one sort of prediction, but if you sample a different noise vector, then you would get different predictions for all agents. So it just means how would the scene, like what are the different types in ways in which the scene can unroll. So you can have like multiple future realizations, basically. And so sampling different noise vectors would give you different realizations of the scene. But to answer your question, like so if you have to generate like multiple trajectories, you have to run this network multiple times for generating different futures.
Okay, great. So with different noise, you can just have multiple outcomes, and you can probably later select which one is the best or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. I think Yash here has a question. He's raising his hand. So please unmute.
Yeah, hello. So my question is basically like as the previous question you said like you can predict multiple trajectories by sampling different like noise every time. So like different. So how is it? So how do you predict what is the probability? Like as you said in the previous slide that there might be some trajectory which has a probability of 0.8, other might have 0.2 and something like that. So how do you incorporate that into that? So is it related to the noise in the way it is sampled or something like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So in this particular work, we don't explicitly try and create a probability. Like we don't explicitly try and score every trajectory. In the following work that I'll show, you would do it. But the way this is kind of incorporated in the setting is by using a conditional variational autoencoder. So when you're actually sampling this noise, you sample from a Gaussian distribution. So when your noise is actually sampled close to the mean, it would just mean that you're trying to predict most likely scenarios. So if you try and sample something like away from the mean, then it would sort of like most of your predicted samples you see kind of will be like grouped together. So yeah, so it's kind of inbuilt using inside the CVAE, but we don't explicitly score trajectories at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we have one last question. Probably we'll just take it before the next thing. Yeah, Karthik, please go ahead.
So my question was basically regarding the Triple IT Delhi project that you did. In that you mentioned that autonomous car was using a LiDAR and was given 2 coordinates and was following waypoints.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to know, like, was there any mapping of the environment involved or something like that? And if yes, so how was it done for, like, because it's a custom environment sort of. So how was that done, if any?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, so yeah, mapping, we did do mapping, but it was an online map. We didn't do SLAM because we had GPS already available and GPS was fairly accurate. So we did do online mapping. So we have a LiDAR, which you cannot actually see on this video, but there's a LiDAR here and there's a GPS attached. So we try to create occupancy maps using the LiDAR information that the LiDAR is actually giving, and try and predict a goal point. Like we try to bring down the GPS waypoint to the local frame of reference, which is the occupancy map, and try and plan a path towards that goal point that is there on the occupancy map using RT star. So yeah.
Okay, I hope that clarifies the answer. There are no more questions. And please continue, Sriram. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Great questions. All right, so moving on to the next work. So this work is titled Divide and Conquer for the Innovative iOS Trajectory Prediction. So this was a work that was published in CVPR 21 as an oral. And so the motivation here is like consider this scenario where like cars are kind of moving in opposite directions, right? So if you have like an implausible predictions like as shown here, like if you have these implausible predictions of agents that actually interact with the self-driving vehicle, so assume this white car is your SDV, it can actually make SDV take conservative actions. Like the SDV might think that the car is actually coming towards you and it might just stop. And if you have predictions that actually do not follow the road semantics, it can also lead to SDB executing dangerous maneuvers. For example, if the SDB thinks that the yellow car is actually kind of go out of the road, it might think that okay, it's not going to be a problem to me, and like the SDV is would try to then accelerate towards the car, but that's not the real scenario that is going to happen. So the SDV should predict trajectories that is tightly aligned, coupled with the semantics of the scene. And also, like similarly in situations like where SDV is also trying to take turns, the oncoming vehicle can either yield or accelerate. So this requires SDV to have like multimodal predictions that cover different modes of the distribution, similar to what we did previously. So our work is kind of divided into two parts here. So we focus on predicting multimodal outputs using multi-choice learning, and also propose ALAN to obtain like strong semantic coupling by imposing constraints on driving behavior for trajectory prediction. So we specifically focus on using multi-choice learning and propose a better initialization to the winner takes all loss that we use. So here we kind of show a toy example where we try to capture different modes of the distribution using hypotheses numbered from 1 to 8. So these ovals are basically different modes. This is just a toy example where we are trying to show. So if you consider previous works in multi-choice learning, such as like the vanilla WT objective, they actually depend on initialization for like optimal convergence, and which makes actually the training process very brittle. So it might converge at once, sometime it might not if you train it again with a different set of parameters. So follow-up works try to address this problem of convergence, but kind of still suffer from the problem of outputs occupying spurious modes, as shown here. So in this work, we try and propose method called divide and conquer that acts as like a better initialization to the winner takes all loss. So what we do is in the first stage, the tag penalizes all the hypotheses with the entire data, causing all predictions to go towards the center of the distribution. And we divide these hypotheses into sets and backpropagate through the set that is closest to the ground truth. And we kind of perform this iteratively. And the key idea here is that these sets form something called centroidal Voronoi tessellation at every stage. And this would ensure some data to be enclosed in the Voronoi space during the split, which would then lead to hypotheses that do not produce any spurious modes. So if you look at here, all hypotheses capture some part of the data, which was not the case in the previous multi-choice objective scenarios. All right, let me now try and describe ALAN that uses like existing lane center lines in the scene as anchors for trajectory prediction. So in this work, we kind of use both rasterized top view information and also the lane center lines as one of the inputs to our network. We concatenate feature outputs from like respective encoders in pass trajectory encoder and central lane encoder, and pass it through a multi-agent convolutional encoder with top view map of the scene. We then extract something called hypercolumn descriptors for every agent. So hypercolumn descriptors are something like feature vectors from different convolutional layers of the agent at some particular pixel location, basically. So the intuition here is to kind of capture these interactions that happen between the agents at different scales of the convolution. Like if we have like higher convolutional layers, we try to capture the global context of the scene, while like the lower convolutional layers try to retain the nearby interactions between different agents. So we provide primary predictions in like normal tangential coordinates with respect to every input lane. So the prediction is not something xy that we predict in the global Cartesian form, we predict in normal tangential form. So the coordinate system is defined in such a way that the normal tangential coordinates actually depends on the input lane. And we also make auxiliary predictions that we do in global Cartesian coordinates to kind of regularize our primary outputs. So the intuition here is that so since our primary predictions are coupled with the lanes, so if you can have two predictions, like one vehicle taking a left turn and other vehicle taking a right turn, having same normal tangential values, because they are dependent on the input lane. So two vehicles with two vehicles can have same NT values with completely different dynamics. So what we do is we try and predict auxiliary predictions, which would then sort of regularize our primary outputs and kind of like have this notion of dynamics included into the network. And finally, we also rank our predictions by generating a score for every trajectory using an inverse optimal control based ranking module. So this is kind of an inverse reinforcement learning module where it would just provide try and score a reward, like try and predict the reward for the generated trajectory. So our network is kind of supervised based on like 3 objectives, one including the winner takes all loss that I just proposed, basically our proposed DAC approach that I just described earlier. So here are some video results from our work. So you can see that Alan kind of shows multimodal predictions with tight semantic coupling. So here the triangles basically indicate the endpoints of our predicted outputs. And you can see that the predictions are tightly coupled with the scene. So here are some empirical results, like Alan provides on par and better performance when compared to other state-of-the-art methods on uScene's benchmark. And the one thing to note here is it provides significantly low off-road rate, like if you have compared with other baselines, you get less than 1% off-road rate, which indicates that our method has a strong semantic alignment with the road. So to conclude, we propose DAC to learn better multimodal predictions, and also Alan to kind of impose constraints in driving behavior for trajectory prediction. We learn better multimodality in Alan using DAC, while we obtain strong semantic alignment with the help of anchor lanes. So if you guys have any questions on this, I can pause at this point, or I can finish up the embodied AI topic.
Any questions, guys? Feel free to raise your hands. If you're preserving for them, then it's also fine. Questions? Okay, I don't think there is any question, Shriram. Just a quick question from my side. Like when you introduced Alan, I was just curious how the model is able to, get some abstract representation of the temporal continuity or any form of relation. That is was a little hard for me to follow, because you're sending in a single image, right? So let's say there are 2 cars or 2 objects, and I cannot say exactly how the dynamics is going to evolve in time with a single stack. This is a very classical thing if you see in deep reinforcement learning. So they give a stack of images. So how exactly do you do it here?
Okay, so what we provide as input, so if like we have something called past trajectory encoder, which would like kind of take in the temporal information of like the past trajectory is not just one single point, it's a sequence of points of how the vehicle has been. So an LSTM is actually placed in this particular past trajectory encoder, which would sort of temporally encode the information and provide a feature vector, which is then embedded into this multi-agent convolutional encoder. So yeah, to answer your question, like we do have temporal temporal information encoded, but it is just done in the past trajectory encoder. And what we do is like at the current location, we encode these features on the map and we pass it through a multi-agent convolutional encoder, which would then sort of like model interactions and capture semantics from the scene and try and predict trajectories, sort of it.
Yeah. Now it's clear. You just enforce the temporal data on a single,
Yeah.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
All right. So let me just very briefly introduce the topic embodied AI. So I just wanted to include this here to kind of get you guys excited. Just sort of give you guys an overview of what are the different problems that people are trying to solve in the embodied AI domain. I wouldn't necessarily I'll necessarily be talking anything about my work, but just sort of give you guys an overview of what's out there. So to kind of like describe what is embodied AI, like as described by Dhruv Batra in one of his talks, embodied AI is the science and engineering of intelligent machines with a physical or virtual embodiment. So, like if you consider like most machine learning methods that are kind of trained using like large static data sets, and like all these methods have kind of achieved like good performance in perception tasks, like but implementation of these methods, like if you consider an uncontrolled environment, is kind of challenging. And these methods also always require some human in the loop to be able to act on the environment and perform the task. So in contrast, like embodied AI is a growing area in the community where people propose interactive learning in which like the AI agent is placed inside an environment and it can interact with the surrounding to learn and solve a complicated task. Give an overview of what has been, how the community has been growing. So in 2020 Embodied AI Workshop, it consists of just two main challenges, like one object navigation task, another is point navigation task. However, like the number of challenges this year has increased to 10 tasks, and also the number of simulation platforms has increased from 3 from last year to in 2021. And the community is moving from like simple interaction task based embodied AI problems to complex, heavily interactive embodied AI tasks like with multimodal inputs like text, audio, and so on. So I would just kind of very briefly give you guys an overview of how different kinds of tasks are being set up. So if you consider this particular task, the goal here, it's a point goal navigation task. The goal here is that the agent has to navigate towards an input goal point, which is specified in terms of r comma theta. So the agent has to navigate to a distance 3.4 meter and angle 75 degree in this particular episode. So the agent is allowed to access noisy RGB and only noisy depth. You might actually think this is a very simple problem to solve because it just has to navigate towards an input point that is given as input, but turns out that it is not that simple. So the last year, the performance that was achieved was around 66%, but this year we have a significant increase in success rate, like 96%. So if you don't have access to the map information, just navigating towards a goal point, just using RGB and depth is a very challenging task. A different variety of problems is a problem like a different sort of problem is like trying to navigate towards objects instead of goal points that is provided as input. Like in this, like you have a goal like find a stool. So the agent has to navigate towards a stool by just using RGB and depth. And the kind of success rate that people have achieved in this setting is around 30% success rate. So the way these methods are kind of like scored is based on a metric called SPL, which is abbreviated as success weighted by path length. So it basically means that it's success multiplied by path length took by the agent by the optimal path length. So if agent takes optimal path length, then your success is weighted by 1. If agent takes path length more than your optimal path length, the success is weighted less. All right, so and a different set of tasks that is out there is social and interactive navigation tasks. So this is a task in iGibson where the agent has to again navigate towards a goal point, but in this scenario there are like some dynamic actors in the scene. So the agent has to somehow avoid these dynamic actors and try to navigate towards a particular goal point. And on a similar way, there is this interactive navigation tasks where you have a bunch of objects that's placed around inside a simulated environment, and the agent has to navigate towards a goal point. But in order to do that, the agent has to interact or like move around some of like small obstacles and try and navigate towards the goal. But the main challenge here is that the agent has to then identify what are the kind of obstacles that it can actually move. For example, if it actually tries to move this coffee table, then the episode would fail. because it cannot actually move the coffee table, and it's a collision. But if it actually, but it can move things like hat, shoes, and so on. So the so you can assume a situation in a home where like things are very cluttered and the agent has to kind of like push around things to be able to reach some places. So uh, that's the motivation behind this task. So the agent has to kind of identify what are the objects that can actually interact with. Let me just try this video silently. So the other very sort of variety of tasks that's out there is vision and language-based navigation. So here, like the agent is kind of given with a high-level goal of like rinse off a mug and place it in the coffee maker. So this is just the input that stays the input that the agent is given, and it is just, I mean, it should just operate on RGBD input. So if you can imagine what are the steps that it has to take in order to be able to achieve this task. First, it has to walk to the coffee maker on the right, pick up the coffee maker, pick up the coffee mug, turn and walk towards the sink, wash the mug in the sink, pick up the mug, put it back on the coffee maker, and toggle the coffee maker. So you can imagine like it's a very long horizon task that is there, and the agent has to kind of identify what are the different steps that it has to do just based on this language input. So it's kind of like a multi-modal like vision and text-based navigation and like task completion. So the current success rate that we have in this particular task is around 26%. And finally, another set of tasks is like audio-visual navigation, where the agent has to kind of navigate towards a location where the sound is being emitted. So the challenge here is that there'll be like sounds from piano that are some other locations where it would actually interfere. So the agent has to kind of fuse the sound information as well as the visual input to be able to navigate towards the source location of this particular where the sound is actually arising from. So these are like you can imagine like in situations like in a search and rescue scenario where someone is actually shouting and there is an autonomous agent which has to kind of navigate towards that source of the sound by inferring where it is actually coming from and avoiding all these interferences that you have. All right. So yeah, that's it from my side. But if you guys have any questions, yeah, I can take any questions from.
I have a question regarding the problem that you described in embodied AI, where the robot was to go to a particular location using only RGB data, right? So, like, how is it how in embodied AI, like, how different is the formulation as compared to SLAM?
All right. So I didn't try and mention something here. So so you can do with a SLAM. So in a normal SLAM setup, what you would need is mapping, localization, and planning, which is basically active SLAM that you're trying to do. So if you have so that is the roboticist point of view of trying to solve this problem. But the community is also looking at like how would you be able to do just by using these RGBD information that is given as input, like not building any explicit map representation of the environment. Like how can you kind of navigate towards a point just by using images as input, and that's kind of the way that even we try to do so.
So we are not constructing a map here, like we are not storing the map or not updating the map.
So there is no map information. So this map that I just showed, that I show is just for visualization purpose. But here the agent is just operating on RGB and depth inputs, and there's no explicit map representation that is being created. As well.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Yeah, I think that's it. It's like it seems very interesting though. Like, could you just point us to some like starting point of, like, say, getting familiar with embodied AI? It seems very interesting.
Yeah, so you can just go to embodiedai.org.
Okay.
I guess so. If I'm not wrong, that's the website. So you can just type CVPR20 CPR 21 embodied AI
Oh, the workshops.
workshops. So
Okay.
you would have all sorts of problems that is out there. And I also feel
Sure,
this
sure.
is
Thank you.
definitely interesting thing that people in universities can try out, because these are the sort of things that people kind of work on trying to build robots in universities. So
Yeah.
having a demo of is much easier for an undergrad student. So I just wanted to kind of introduce that.
Sure. Thanks, Arvind.
Okay, great. Any other questions, guys? Feel free to ask your questions. Nothing to refrain from. I just have a couple of more general questions. I'm just preserving it for the last. So
Sure.
I don't see any hands going up.
Do I stop the recording? Do I stop the recording?
No, it's fine. Like, let it be. Let's just. Okay, so there are no questions. In the interest of time, probably I'll just ask one. If there's anything else, that could be the final question, probably. So yeah, this notion of safety, Sriram, which you tried to mention, like, so we have these trajectories, and we do some form of you satisfy a hierarchy or something of that sort, and ensure, okay, this is the right thing to do. Right. So I'm just going a little out of the context a bit, but this is also possible to do in the low level, right? In controls, like traditionally we have classical foundations like control barrier functions, right? Where we have a more formal notion of safety, and we say, okay, these states are something that I need to like be away from. These are something that I should not do. So I'm just curious, safety can be done in planning level as well as your control level. So I'm just curious, why exactly, what are some of the benefits, or why is your standpoint on doing this in the planning phase is the right, or are you open to doing it in control? I just want your opinion.
Yeah. So I think if you're trying to do in the controls, I think safety in control is definitely required. The way you try and operate any vehicle or any instrument, you need to have safety in how you do that. But like from the perception point of view, like so there are different things that a safety in control doesn't take as inputs, or like if you consider like constraints in any scene. For example, there's a traffic light, there's a stop sign, or like there is some other vehicle like traveling towards you and so on. So these are like different things that you actually don't take as input in a control setting. But what you would be concerned in a control setting, okay, this is the maximum jerk or acceleration that I can achieve for this vehicle, that would like sort of be the safety limit for when I want to achieve any particular speed or something. So having like if you want a completely safe system, then trying to take in all these factors would play a major role in achieving the safety.
So will it be right to say, okay, like the safety in controls is more at the system level, whereas if you have a task, well, it's your planning.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. And one very naive question here is, so I understood most of your approach, and I got the motivation behind it. But is there any assumptions or minor modeling design constraints which you considered for the domain specific task at hand, like let's say navigation or driving? I mean, I just want to know how transferable these methods are to other forms of robots. Let's say a legged robot, or let's say a swarm of aerial robots. So I'm just
yeah. So it's a very good question. So frankly, it depends on what you're trying to predict. So it does not depend on the system that you kind of have. It depends on where you try and deploy these prediction systems. So this can, like for example, if you're trying to predict the trajectories of different agents or different vehicles in the scene, or if you're trying to predict pedestrian motions. So if you train something that can do such kind of tasks, it doesn't depend. It's agnostic to what platform or testbed that you're using to deploy these things on. So yeah, you can definitely do it on legged robot, and the kind of representations these systems operate on is like, let's say, top view representation, which is also kind of agnostic to any sensor modality or thing that you use. So yeah, you can definitely apply it to any robot that you have, except that you would have to be predicting similar kind of, it has to be in kind of similar situations. But there are also methods which do predict robots vehicle navigation plus human pedestrian navigation. So
Okay. Yeah. Great. So, yeah. Any final questions? Okay, so if not, in the interest of time, we can probably conclude. So thanks a lot, Sriram. Thanks a lot for accepting our invitation and giving this wonderful talk. So personally, when we think of self-driving, probably a few years before it was something new, but now we feel like Waymo has done it, Tesla is doing it, things like that. But your talk was uniquely giving a different perspective on interactions and how we model. So that is something we don't directly see when we think about self-driving or navigation. So thanks a lot for that. It was very intriguing, and I hope a few of our own students here will be exploring this domain with utmost interest. Thanks for your time. And,
Yeah, thank you. It was a
You want to
pleasure.
talk about RoboRig before concluding, or
Yeah, we can probably stop the recording. Sumar.
Sure.
Yeah.